To okay, welcome to the volunteers pre-meeting for a People's Forum for Cooling the Planet. I'm very grateful that you're all here. Very excited to see everyone. People continue to trickle in, so Marco is in the main room welcoming folks. And in the meantime, I'll go over the agenda briefly. So Guy is going to be presenting to us all some material he's prepared. And then after he's done presenting, we will do some Q&A for Guy. And then after we're done with the Q&A, I will retake the microphone and give some of my preliminary thoughts and ideas and inspirations for just a few minutes, as will Marco and Mike and James and Melissa, a few of us who have been working hard at initiating this whole thing, getting it off the ground. And then we'll turn the microphones over to all of you so that you can say hello, introduce yourself. As long as we've got a reasonable number of people here, which we do at the moment, then we should have time for everyone to say hello and introduce yourselves and share a bit about what brought you here and your own ideas. This is a very much a co-creative effort where we're all coming together to co-create this thing that is the brainchild of Professor Guy McPherson and myself and the other colleagues I mentioned. And but it's really for all of us to co-create. We're coming together to save our planet from exponential overheating and myriad other crises. But the first focus is on cooling the planet. And there's some Google Docs that link from Guy's video that he published a week ago, the 4-minute plus video. And you can follow those to read more. All right, with that, Guy, if you're ready, I'm going to pass it over to Guy, and feel free to screen share when you need to, and I'll go ahead and spotlight you so that we can see you best. Or actually, how do I do that? Marco, I might need your help there because I can't seem to spotlight Guy. Me on a, I'm on, let's see. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was another conversation that was going on. Yeah, your co-host. So go, and so am I, but why can't I make Guy? Oh, pin
Are
there.
you?
Okay, now you're
No,
pinned.
no, no, no. Pin
Spotlight
won't.
for everyone.
Pin won't
Spotlight
do
for
it.
everyone.
Okay. Oh,
Thank you.
Spotlight for everyone.
Marco, can you do that?
Not from my phone.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm co-host, and for some reason I'm not able to spotlight Guy for everyone.
I have a recommendation, and that is we could each pin him to our own screen.
Yeah.
If they know how to do that. Let me think.
I'll tell you what, Marco.
It's
Marco, what?
It's super
Maybe.
easy to do. You go to view and you click on speaker, and then Guy will come up as the speaker. Super easy. If you're on a Mac, it's the top right of your screen. It says view. Click on that, and then it says speaker, and it says gallery. Click on speaker.
Okay, very good. We'll do. Thanks, sweetheart. All right, yeah, top right. Okay, well, in any case, let me turn it over to Guy and take it away, Guy. Great to have you here. Thank you so much. Let me give a bit more of an introduction. I just want to express my gratitude to Guy for bringing us all together and for getting us up to speed on the extreme planetary urgency that we are in the midst of. And thank you so much for making this possible, Guy, at People's Forum for Cooling the Planet. Turning it over to Guy, and I'll ask everyone to mute their microphones.
Okay, I'm not going to be able to get this on the first try, I bet. Oh, oh my goodness. Okay, it says I cannot share my screen until I get off Zoom and join again. Does that make sense?
No, but if that's what you got to do, I guess that's what you got to
Well,
do. I'll head back
Is
to the
is
main room.
Guy, is Guy a co-host, Jamin?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Oh, should be able.
Well, that's what I thought. So I went to share. I went to share again.
It's working now, Guy.
Now we can see it, Guy. Now we.
All right. Does that look like a whole screen?
Yep.
Yes, it
Excellent.
does.
Okay. Thank you, everybody who managed to get me technologically this far. So the miracles have already begun. Earth is in the midst of abrupt, irreversible climate change, and also in the midst of a mass extinction event, at least the 9th, although we frequently hear it referred to as the 6th extinction event. And given that information, I drew 2 lines from Edward Abbey, Southwestern American writer, speaker, and public figure. If the situation is hopeless, there's nothing to worry about, which I think is a fine line. And then going a step further, action is the antidote to despair. And based on the kinds of things he wrote and spoke about, and certainly the kinds of things I write and speak about, despair sometimes enters the equation. Most of us are familiar with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. That's an international organization within the United Nations created basically to fail. It was created in 1988 during the Ronald Reagan administration. As Michael Oppenheimer, Regents Professor of Geosciences and International Affairs at Princeton, says on the Environmental Defense Fund website in an essay titled How the IPCC Got Started, wrote, the US government saw the creation of the IPCC as a way to prevent the activism stimulated by my colleagues and me from controlling the policy agenda. The IPCC replaced the Advisory Group on Greenhouse Gases, which pointed out much more accurately the situation where we were and where we are now. The Advisory Group on Greenhouse Gases indicated that beyond 1 degree C may trigger self-reinforcing feedback loops. And sure enough, David Spratt, climate science and speaker and writer, said in his presentation in October 2014 that these self-reinforcing feedback loops were triggered at 0.5 degree C. So I hear almost every day, in fact, somebody sends me an email message with a link to a YouTube presentation where some climate scientist is saying that we haven't yet triggered any self-reinforcing feedback loops, so we really don't have anything to worry about. But obviously we have. We're in the midst of the most abrupt climate event in the history of the planet. Even the IPCC admits in their global warming of 1.5 degrees that we are producing an event. Abrupt geophysical events do not approach rates of human-driven change. So this is a big deal. This is far more abrupt, occurring far more quickly than, say, for example, the asteroid that struck the Yucatan Peninsula and caused the extinction of the dinosaurs and many other species. That was a mass extinction event. In fact, the IPCC special report on the ocean's cryosphere in a changing climate indicates that climate change is irreversible. So here we have abrupt climate change being admitted by the IPCC, and not just abrupt, but the most abrupt event in planetary history, and also relying on peer-reviewed literature. It's irreversible as well. I've identified 68 self-reinforcing feedback loops in a long essay I wrote long ago at guymcpherson.com. And those 68 self-reinforcing feedback loops are all based on peer-reviewed literature. Among the consequences of abrupt, irreversible climate change that we are observing right now are higher temperatures, more droughts, wilder weather, changing rain and snow patterns, less snowpack than there was before, melting glaciers, shrinking sea ice, particularly in the planetary air conditioner known as the Arctic Ocean, thawing permafrost, and so on. In addition to these things in the graphic, there's wildfires, volcanism, earthquakes, and of course a mass extinction event. All of these are underlain by the abrupt, irreversible climate change that is going on right now. So that's inconvenient. The all-important factor or element that I never see a paid climate scientist speak about or write about is the importance of the rate of environmental change. This is from a paper in the renowned peer-reviewed journal Oikos, and it indicates that the rapid rate of environmental change restricts the ability of organism populations or communities to respond. So ecological entities in general cannot respond, cannot keep up fast enough with the rate of environmental change. Most notably, this is I'm not sure I can make this work, but I'll give it a try. This demonstrates the exponential rate of change. And it's not going to work for me, is it? Okay. I had this all set up. It worked during the practice run, and we'll just move on. Okay. The rate of environmental change projected by the IPCC a long time ago, June 26th, 2013, in fact, in the peer-reviewed ecology letters, the rate of environmental change projected by the IPCC exceeds the ability of vertebrates to adapt by 10,000 times. Mammals can't keep up either, as indicated by the renowned proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. All of which indicates that tardigrades almost certainly will not survive. And the tardigrades are the go-to group of organisms that people refer to when I indicate that we are in the midst of abrupt, irreversible climate change. Well, if tardigrades will not survive, you can imagine that the prospects for us aren't good either. Dr. Henry G., paleontologist, evolutionary biologist, senior editor at Nature, concluded on November 30th, 2021 in Scientific American. If we're going to write about human extinction, we better start writing now. And the title of his essay was Humans Are Doomed to Go Extinct. And he was indicating the rapidity with which we are going extinct when he wrote, if we're going to start writing about human extinction, we better start writing now. And sure enough, we're on the verge. E.O. Wilson, the father of diversity, in his 1992 book, indicated that we have entered a mass extinction event and indicated that this event was occurring over the span of a single generation of humans, in fact. So we are in the midst of, again, the most abrupt event in planetary history. And we've known this, those of us who read E.O. Wilson when he was alive, for more than 30 years. The IPCC's report, Global Warming of 1.5 degrees, indicates that we, again, are in the midst of very abrupt climate change and far faster than is driven by so-called natural forces in the past. Far faster, for example, than the mass extinction event about 66 million years ago that drove the dinosaurs and many others to extinction. And the good news, and there has to be good news associated with a mass extinction event, right? This particular one cooled the planet and therefore allows mammals to rise to dominance. Dinosaurs disappeared. If you have a chicken in your yard, you have the closest relative to what remains of dinosaurs. And good news, because we got rid of those nasty dinosaurs and a bunch of other species and changed the physical environment on the planet, mammals rose to dominance. I can pretty much guarantee you, you and I would not be here were it not for that mass extinction event some 66 million years ago. Strona and Bradshaw wrote a paper in Scientific Reports, which is part of the renowned Nature series. That was November 13th, 2018, and they indicated that 5 to 6 degrees C above the 1750 baseline causes the extinction of all life on Earth. And I want to throw in a caveat there. The rate of environmental change, what matters considerably more than the number. So they threw out these numbers, 5 to 6 degrees C above the 1750 baseline. And they indicated this would cause the extinction of all life on Earth within a few centuries. When you consider the rate of environmental change, how much more rapidly it is occurring than they were writing about, then you have to reach the conclusion that it's going to happen a lot faster than that. They did allow for some hope, however. They wrote that a rogue, seemingly desert Earth wandering across the universe could still have some amazingly lucky and unlikely circumstances of surviving. So perhaps there could be life on Earth. I think that's quite a stretch myself. So I don't think I'm ready to go there. We have known since December 10th, 2018, relying upon the representative concentration pathways of the IPCC, that climates like those of the Pliocene will be present here as soon as 2030 in the current era and persist under climate stabilization scenarios. The representative concentration pathways ignore all self-reinforcing feedback loops and also assume that we're going to not warm the planet beyond 1C. We're beyond 2C now. So that seems stunningly optimistic, but again, it was quite a while ago. Oh, the Pliocene was about 2C warmer than it is right now. And so to increase the temperature between now and then from 2C to a little more than 4C is a stunningly rapid rate of change and would almost certainly interfere with the ability of our species and many others to keep up. In a paper in Nature, April 8th, 2020, relying again upon the representative concentration pathways of the IPCC, projects that the future disruption of ecological assemblages as a result of climate change will be beyond the ability of species to keep up. And such exposure events begin before 2030. They begin this decade. And so there's a couple of renowned pieces of information, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences and Nature, indicating that during this decade, that we're almost halfway through at this point, that we will see far worse conditions than we are seeing right now. This is an interesting body of work put together by Tim Garrett at the University of Utah. He, in his first paper on civilization as a heat engine, it went out for review. Well, initially it was accepted. It was accepted in December of 2009, as I recall. And then there was an outcry from the academic community because these are the most civilized people on the planet. It can't be our fault. It can't be the fault of academics, after all. So they protested. In response, the paper was allowed to be published 13 months later, but only upon the response of two research groups that Tim Garrett could not respond to. One of the 5 peer-reviewed papers of Garrett's is called No Way Out: The Double Bind in Seeking Global Prosperity Alongside Mitigated Climate Change. And it points out, as do the other 5 papers he wrote, that there's no way out, that we cannot have civilization on the planet, and because of other factors, we can't get rid of civilization. So civilization is a heat engine that requires abundant growth, storage, and distribution of grains. And here's a paper from the Journal of Political Economy, a peer-reviewed paper. And you can see the highlighted bit there. Hierarchy or civilization arose as a result of the shift to dependence on appropriable cereal grains. Again, grains require abundant growth, storage, and distribution. Civilization requires abundant growth, storage, and distribution of grains in order to persist. All this points to a cool, stable climate that is required to grow, store, and distribute abundant grains. And such conditions arose on Earth several thousand years ago and led to the creation of several civilizations. Up until that point, there's no evidence of civilizations, plural, arising on the planet. And if you look at the graph there, you can see that there has not been any significant period of time during which there was a relatively cool planet as there is today. Way back in time, maybe, but this was before vertebrates had evolved into existence. So why not eliminate civilization, as several people have suggested doing, most notably the people at Deep Green Resistance. First of all, there's the aerosol masking effect. At the same time that industrial activity produces those greenhouse gases that we're all familiar with, industrial activity also produces small particles known as aerosols that go up into the atmosphere and act like little mirrors reflecting back incoming sunlight before it has an opportunity to hit the planet and therefore to be trapped by greenhouse gases and warm the planet. And secondly, limiting civilization means the catastrophic, uncontrolled meltdown of nuclear facilities, which number more than 450. The aerosol masking effect results from the industrial activity, as already indicated, according to Professor James Hansen, the so-called founder of climate scientists. The aerosols fall out of the atmosphere in about 5 days. He's indicated this in many different presentations, interviews, and peer-reviewed papers that he has written. And how bad is that? The cooling resulting from contemporary aerosol masking is 55%, including 133% over land. Well, most of us live on land. And so the cooling that results from those aerosols being up in the sky is keeping the planet cooler than it would otherwise be. If they fall out 5 days after civilization ends, then they will considerably warm the planet from the slightly above 2°C that we are now to 4.7, about 4.67°C above the 1750 baseline. And that would happen very quickly. COVID-19 provided an excellent opportunity to test this idea, and the test was passed. In fact, in many places, beginning in the area around Wuhan, China, the temperature increased regionally as COVID moved from spot to spot, and precipitation also increased regionally. And this has been documented in several peer-reviewed journals. And here again is an indication of what I just indicated, the paper from Jia et al. From June 15th, 2021 in Nature Communications. And by accounting for these sampling biases, the magnitude of the aerosol masking effect increases globally 133% over land and 33% over the ocean. So this is a huge and yet almost never recognized factor. Interestingly, the meltdown of nuclear facilities will cause ionizing radiation to be released into the atmosphere. And as one result, the stratospheric ozone will be stripped away from the stratosphere, and that will cause the superheating of the planet. far, far more rapidly than anything any of us have observed so far. If you've seen the 2021 film Finch, you've seen an example. Although they took a little artistic license, they would have a person's hand or arm go into the sun, and in a matter of seconds, it would be sunburned. That's artistic license. It would actually take a few minutes, not a few seconds. But in any case, this would superheat the planet far faster than anything any of us online here could even imagine. So that's very inconvenient. However, that's not the greatest threat we face. That would be an ice-free Arctic Ocean that will produce the fastest rate of environmental change in the history of our species. It was predicted to occur by Harvard professor James Anderson and also by University of California, San Diego professor Jennifer McKinnon before now. So this is the greatest threat we faced. Fortunately, we haven't seen it yet. We haven't been living through it, which is really convenient for those of us who appreciate life on Earth. In fact, Anderson was quite confident about his statement in Forbes on January 15th, 2018, the chance there will be permanent ice in the Arctic after the year in question, after 2024, after 2023, sorry, is essentially zero. Actually, he said after 2022, and that would be in 2023, and certainly by 2024. We now have the U.S. Navy postgraduate school's 6-month ensemble forecast, which indicates we will not have an ice-free Arctic this year. How important is the ice-free Arctic Ocean? According to a paper by Pistone and colleagues published on June 20th, 2019 in the renowned Geophysical Research Letters, the absence of Arctic ice, of ice floating on the Arctic Ocean, is equivalent to the effect of 1 trillion tons of CO2 emissions. And that indicates that we would accelerate or add to planetary warming by an estimated 25 years. An estimated 25 years of carbon dioxide emissions would be released shortly after the first ice-free Arctic Ocean in the last 70,000 plus years. The National Snow and Ice Data Center has a nice graph here indicating the amount of ice that's left. And you can see that the amount of ice has gone down considerably, that we're well below the mean. And so that does not bode well, but good news. We got to see another year with the 6-month ensemble forecast this year. And I loaded this yesterday. It indicates that the Arctic sea ice, this again is from the National Snow and Ice Data Center, and they indicate that we're headed for a relatively low. How low? How low? You can see that the 2012 line is still the lowest in measurement history, and we had the satellite that takes these measurements in 1979. So since 1979, 2012 was the lowest so far. 2024, as you can see from the blue line, is hanging in there still slightly above that 2012 average. I strongly encourage you to follow the 6-month ensemble forecast created by the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School, and it is released typically in early April, sometimes mid-April. So it's not really 6 months, it's sometimes 6.5 months, and it indicates whether an ice-free Arctic Ocean will follow in the coming late September. And if that happens, it would be catastrophic, obviously, the equivalent of 25 years of carbon dioxide emissions, all in a matter of a few months. And so I encourage you to follow that forecast, and you can find it right there in ps.edu, Naval Postgraduate School.edu. And you go to their website, you can see the RASM, the tool, and you can see this year that what they projected as of yesterday was approximately bottoming out at approximately 4.5 million square kilometers of ice floating on the Arctic Ocean when we reach the end of the year. So it appears that yet again, we got lucky and we will not have an ice-free Arctic Ocean this year. As a consequence, we will have the ability to persist for another year and work on tasks such as the one that we came together to talk about today. So I'll leave it right there. I'll leave the predictions up on the screen, I think, if I'm able to do that while taking other people's questions. So thank you for the opportunity to chat with you today, and I welcome your questions and especially your answers.
Okay, very good. So let's, I'm going to go back to view. Actually, Guy, if you can stop the screen share, or if you want me to do that, happy to.
There, I think I stopped it.
No, it's still screen sharing. Here, I'll go ahead and stop it for you. View options, stop participant sharing. Okay, great. And if folks want to go back to viewing, go to gallery view, that's what I'm doing right now, just so we can all see each other. And go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question or a comment for Guy, and we'll do Q&A. And then once we get through Q&A, then we can go on to introducing ourselves and having kind of a bit of a share fest, which I'm looking forward to. But BJ, you got your hand up. Go ahead, BJ. And you're muted there, BJ.
This is my favorite kind of question, the silent kind.
Yeah.
All
I take it as more of a statement. It's kind of like a silent protest sort of thing. Anyway, BJ, are you back on?
Yes, I'm back on, and thank you so much, Guy. The seriousness of the situation it's good to hear that, although we are often reminded of it. My question has to do with why would people glob on to James Hansen's focus of the sulfurs and not talk about stopping fossil fuels, because fossil fuels produce the sulfurs like the ships do. So they're like, yay, we've got to stop fossil fuels still, even though you brought up how that it will be devastating because we'll lose that cooling. And why is it that they don't talk about the deforestation, which the trees bring down the carbon, and yet every day another thousands of acres of trees are being down. So I wonder if you could address that a little bit. And thank you so much again.
I refer to the aerosol masking effect as the best kept secret in climate science. I didn't discover it until I had already left active participation on campus and moved to a $1 million homestead I created in an extremely rural location. Hansen refers to it as our Faustian Bargain,
Right.
because it's a classic case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I don't know why nobody's been talking about it. The first peer-reviewed paper on the topic came out in 1929. There have been more than 24 peer-reviewed papers that address the aerosol masking effect, and it's almost impossible to find them. Corporate media will not do an interview where they have somebody talk about it. They will not write up. I challenge anybody to find a paper in the Washington Post or the New York Times, which actually tells us about the aerosol masking effect. I don't think it'll happen. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's incredible. And yet that's where all the focus is on.
Right. Yeah. So recently the rules were changed regarding bunker fuel or dirty fuel diesel used for shipping. And that greatly increased the temperature of the Atlantic Ocean with all of the ships going back and forth between Europe and the United States, North America generally. And so there's evidence all over the place. It's out there if you know where to look, but most people are not looking. And I strongly suspect that's because they're discouraged from looking. I mean, I was subject to a coordinated defamation campaign, almost certainly put together by some part of the federal government, that literally destroyed my life. I could no longer go on tour because if somebody invited me to go on tour, they received an email message from somebody indicating horrible things about me, and you don't want to have anything to do with me. So I was done. And my dad died believing I was a sexual predator. My mom and my siblings still believe the same thing, even though there's no evidence. You know, this goes back almost 10 years ago to these accusations being made. Notice I haven't been hauled into court yet. Notice dozens of people slander and libel me on a regular basis, including, most importantly, David Wallace Wells, who continues to make hundreds of thousands of dollars off my work. His book, basically I wrote it all except the last chapter, which says horrible things about me. And no, please don't send me another copy, people. I don't want to read it anymore.
Wow.
So I don't know why we're so afraid of the truth with respect to the bad news that is loss of aerosol masking. I don't know.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, thank you.
It's a scary world.
Mm-hmm.
All righty. We've got Maya up next. Go ahead, Maya. Welcome.
Thanks. So as you noted, there has been a lot of research about aerosol masking that's been released, and its its ability to cool the planet. I would imagine that at some point, the government is going to clue in that the current state of heating and the current rate of heating is not sustainable, and we're in a lot of trouble. And I would imagine they're going to look for solutions like aerosol masking. So seeding the atmosphere with something to produce cloud cover. I guess my question is that just hopium? Is that going to do it? Is that going to help us?
There's a Harvard professor. Oh, James Anderson. He was an atmospheric professor who was famous for discovering the link between chlorofluorocarbons and the Antarctic ozone hole. He led that research effort. And he said in an interview with Forbes, released on January 15th, 2018, the chance there will be permanent ice in the Arctic after 2022 is essentially zero. That's a direct line from him. It made it into Forbes. You never heard about it again, or maybe it was just me. I didn't hear about it again. It was more than 3 years later that Jennifer McKinnon at Scripps Institution and the University of California, San Diego, she said she expected an ice-free Arctic Ocean in 2022. And obviously they were both wrong about that. It's one of the very difficult things to forecast is when the ice is going to disappear. Obviously, those are two renowned scholars who got it wrong. Could it be next year? It certainly could be, or maybe not. Maybe there's just so much variability in the amount of ice floating on the Arctic Ocean. There's so much amount of natural variation that we might never be able to forecast it with great accuracy, even on a 6-month basis. Although I have considerably more confidence in the 6-month ensemble forecast than I did in the projection that same research team, led by the same professor, put out in 2012 in the annual review of Earth and Planetary Sciences, which indicated, had that come true, that they projected an ice-free Arctic Ocean 2016 plus or minus 3 years. If that had happened, at this point, I doubt there would be any life on this planet. And certainly we wouldn't be here. So, good news. Sometimes scientists get it wrong. Bad news. Sometimes scientists get it wrong. Sorry, I babble.
All right, very good. Well, we've got two. Go ahead, Guy.
I see somebody's writing in the chat that projections are different than predictions, and yes, they certainly are. In that 2012 paper, they used a linear projection through data points, and they just shot it straight down. That's where they got 2016 plus or minus 3 years. And the last number they had at the time was from 2009, and it was the lowest amount of ice that was existing at the time. So instead of going through a cloud and ending up this way, they had this latest point down here, which dragged the projection down further than it otherwise would have been. So yes, there's a big difference between projection and prediction, and that's why that's why the person who led the team that used a projection is now using the 6-month ensemble prediction, the forecast.
All right, very good. Well, we've got two Marks with their hands up. Now, Mark McCormick, who I know very well. Mark, I don't think you were here for the presentation, were you? Because we're doing Q&A on the presentation right now. So I'm going to put your hand down, and we'll enter general discussion in a little bit here. But right now we're sticking to Q&A based on Guy's presentation. So Mark and Olympia, take it away.
No, actually, I was here for the presentation. Look at my other laptop. It won't let my screen turn on, so I was.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark McCormick. Then.
Yeah, I think that's the main point in your presentation for me, anyway, because I'm on a hunger strike right now for raising awareness, and I know not everybody's a fan of hunger strikes. I think Extinction Rebellion tried it once, but I do think it's the greatest nonviolent action we can take, and I think we should keep doing it repetitively. I got 6 more to go after this, so we can't just do one and done. It's got to be repetitive. So I'm very serious about this, and I'm really happy to hear you, Guy, and Paul Beckwith was here last week. I think that you guys are serious, and I think we have a very serious and professional crew here that can help you. And I think the main point in your presentation was that, like you said at the end here, these corporations just won't talk about these aerosols. Like, they just won't talk about the real issues. And I think that's a government problem. I think that internationally, we don't have a strong enough body to stop transnationals from manipulating countries. And I think the United Nations doesn't have enough teeth to actually do anything about it. So what would you say about starting a world government? Instead of just having nonprofits or grassroots movements, what if we just went for a straight government and then actually implement the regulations by this larger effort? If we're trying to organize globally, I know how hard it is to start a government. Don't put me off as naive, but everything else we're talking about, I don't think will stop what you just mentioned here at the end. If we're really serious about the problem, I think we have to consider these moonshot objectives. I don't know if you agree. What do you think about that? How would you otherwise get them to start talking about the issue?
I think the United Nations is as close as we're going to get to a world government. And people who, especially uninformed people in this country, think that we have freedom that would be lost by the creation of a world government. This is not freedom, folks. It's never been a democracy. It's a republic. Well, it used to be a republic, and I'd say we're well into fascism based on the peer-reviewed papers I've read over the course of the last 25 years. It's difficult for me to imagine that anybody can't call what's going on in this country fascism, because it's the same thing. It's the merger of the corporations and the government. They are essentially one and the same, working hand in glove to ensure maximum profits in any event. So I think it's too late. I think it's too late to cool the planet, but I would love to be proven wrong on that point. And I think it's too late for a world government. I don't think a lot of people are going to go for it, primarily because people are so completely misinformed about the life they're living now. But maybe I'm just cynical and jaded in the spirit of George Carlin, of course, who said that a cynic is a, what do you say? Jeez, these things, they just slip out of my mind.
If you scratch a idealist, you'll find us. If you scratch a cynic, you'll find an idealist.
A disappointed idealist. That's right. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. Yes, I'm a disappointed idealist.
Would you want to try if you had an opportunity with a group of people that were trying to salvage the image of the climate movement, and they're trying to take more professional actions and do the real legal work that would take to pull this off? Would you be interested in trying, getting your optimism maybe perked again, or no, just a total waste of time?
I'm a huge fan of life on Earth. Really. I mean, all species go extinct, and our turn appears to be on the horizon. But I'm not a fan of that happening quickly. For one reason, because if we go, we take the entire planet down with us, the entire living planet, because of those darn nuclear power plants we haven't got around to decommissioning yet, and that take 30 or 40 years to decommission, and also because of the rate of environmental change in our wake. So I'm a fan. I've tried, I suspect I've sacrificed more than all of the people on this call combined. And
I don't know about
my life has been destroyed. You have no idea what I've been through. My life has literally been destroyed. I can't go public with anything. I can't deliver a presentation. I can't submit to an interview. Nothing.
We're sort of two peas in a pod. I'm very much in the same vein, but you're right. The sexual assault stuff is the last straw that they usually throw at you. Usually they throw mental health, then they throw cults, and they throw everything at you. But they're a bit of an inspiration. So I feel like if you can withstand this, you can withstand anything. So that's why I thought, you know what, might as well ask you the question. And I think we need heroes like you. So I really appreciate you carrying on the good fight.
Most people here are probably familiar with the Me Too movement. I was first. I was Me Too'd before anybody else, and it worked stunningly well. It's not that I'm proud of this, you understand. But enough time has passed. If I had done any illegal activities, I would be in court by now. I, at the very least, would be charged with something. I haven't been. There's nothing there.
All righty. Good stuff. On to the next questioner, Mark and Olympia, followed by Kurt, followed by James. Go ahead, Mark.
Jamin, Jack also had his hand up. I
Right.
don't know if he's still here.
Oh, it looks like he took his hand down. I didn't take it down. So
Yeah, I took it down
Jack-
because I have something for later on, not right now.
okay,
Thank you
yeah.
though for bringing that up.
Yeah, we're just doing Q&A right now based on Guy's presentation, and then we'll go into more open conversation after that. So thanks everyone for your patience there, and go ahead, Mark and Olympia.
Yes, Professor McPherson, I've been reading lately several papers about the slowing of the AMOC as being responsible for a 30% slowing in the rate of ice melt in the Arctic. And it would seem to me that that would certainly help explain the discrepancy between the predictions of ice-free Arctic in early 20s. A 30% slowdown is pretty significant, and it certainly isn't a stop, okay? But I've been puzzled. I follow your work very closely, and I've been puzzled why you haven't picked up that particular issue about the slowing of the AMOC.
Because I don't think it's an issue. Maybe it will be, but I think we have warmed the planet so much already that cooling it as a result of slowing or reversing the AMOC seems out of the question. Now, I may be wrong about that, but I haven't seen.
Well, I certainly agree with that, but I think it still helps explain why the predictions could be considered wrong or late, and that certainly helps me, I think, understand that yeah, maybe this is slowing, and maybe it's because the AMOC is slowing. That I'm not saying that helps us all. It just gives us some delay time, which you agree with. But
Right.
it would seem to me to be be the cause of
So, yes, sorry, I misunderstood your question. And so it could be, and I think I have a video coming out on that topic within the next month or so. I'm a little ahead of current events right now in creating and releasing videos. So I think I have one coming out within the next month or two. If I don't, please give me a holler. You can find my email address at guymcpherson.com with little effort. So shoot me some information about that in a month or so when I haven't created the right video.
Okay. Thank you for your answer.
Sure.
Good question there, Mark. Thank you. And up next is James in Cork City, Ireland, followed by Norman in nearby Seattle. Go ahead, James.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks, Guy. My question, I suppose, was a two kind of part question, really. I was given this, you spoke earlier about the increased temperatures due to the lack of aerosol masking, which was noticed in China during the COVID lockdown and elsewhere. And then with the recent peer-reviewed study that came out based on this, the increased temperatures in China due to the lack of sulfur in the shipping fuels, the increased temperature in the Pacific Ocean. Would it be fair to say that it's now proven that the lack of the sulfur in those shipping fuels has caused an increase, the science shows has caused an increase of temperature in the Pacific Ocean and land masses elsewhere? Obviously, the answer wouldn't be putting the sulfur back into the shipping fuel because it's proven that the sulfur is, has been taken out because it's bad for people's health. But it's proven that there is, a masking effect going on. No, it's also like in both ways. The particulates are like little mirrors. They produce certain amount of reflection, and then you have the salt water, the nuclei, which create raindrops, and small low white clouds, which they actually reflect a lot more of the heat than the actual particulates themselves. And that science from that study shows that the clouds have a better effect at reflecting the heat coming in over the ocean, over the Pacific Ocean. So would it not be fair to say that at least some consideration should be taken to the non-invasive method of marine cloud brightening, which is basically spraying salt water into the air and creating salt water nuclei, therefore creating low white clouds over the Pacific Ocean? Would it not be better to put these spraying vessels or devices on the back of the shipping fuels instead of putting the sulfur back in the fuel, and therefore getting back the reflectivity of the low clouds and not having the sulfur in the equation? It's a long-winded question, but would it not be fair to say that that's at least something that should be worth talking about, considered, studied, and at least given it enough study, it could be something that could be used to cool the Arctic and therefore prevent the actual cooling down of the ice-free Arctic? I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. It should be considered. There's been peer-reviewed papers and papers that are submitted for review and haven't been published yet, indicating that the decrease in temperature in one location, even a relatively large region, translates to an increased temperature in other places. And most notably, I don't have it with me now, but there's a peer-reviewed paper from a bunch of folks in Africa and beyond, pointing out that Africans would experience more heat as a result of the use of marine cloud brightening in other places. So if it's used in the Pacific Ocean, for example, I'm sorry, in the Atlantic Ocean, then it would actually cause increased heating in Africa. So should we consider it? Yes. Should we be taking it seriously? Yes. Is it more important than Walmart making an extra $1 million this week? Yes. Are we ever going to admit that? I would be surprised. And that's too bad, because we seem to be far more obsessed with money than we are with life on Earth. the only planet we know for sure that supports life.
All right, good question, good thoughtful answer there. Next up is Norman in Seattle, followed by Kurt in Southern California. Go ahead, Norman.
Hi, Guy. Norm here from Seattle. I met you once in a restaurant. The notable aspect of which was the other fellow at the lunch wanted to figure out how you could monetize your point of view, which was kind of ironic. I don't know if you remember that or not. But anyway, I just have a science question. And in January 2022, the Hunga Tonga Hunga Pai volcano erupted. And apparently didn't put a bunch of ash into the atmosphere, but instead put a whole bunch of water vapor in the stratosphere. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about what the effect of that might be on our current period of current extra warming over the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, that could very well be a contributor. Water vapor is the most abundant greenhouse gas on Earth. So it could very well be that you put more water vapor into the atmosphere that will increase planetary warming. I haven't seen any studies about that. Have you? Have you seen anybody address that after the fact?
I have, and I can't remember the sources right now, but they ascribed a fairly small impact to it. On the other hand, it's not something that we have very much experience with, so it might have pretty much been a random shot.
Right. And it's a double-edged sword as well, right? So volcanoes frequently put lots of water vapor into the atmosphere. That's a greenhouse gas. They also put ionizing radiation into the atmosphere, which would strip away stratospheric ozone and cause the outcome that we observed in the 2021 film Finch, the superheating of the planet. So it's a mixed bag, like almost everything else humans do and have ever done. And clearly, we almost never think in advance about what we're doing. Yeah, maybe next time.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
All right, thanks, Norman. Up next is Kurt, followed by Jack. Go ahead, Kurt.
Phil, Guy, I'm so sorry that you have this incredible traumatic experience with life, being a whistleblower for so much that everybody needs to see and do about. We can't go backwards. And the thing is that thank God you're still persevering. And we are all persevering. Go ahead.
Can I interrupt you right there?
Sure.
Now, I would encourage you to watch the short skit by Louis C.K., the stand-up comic who acts sometimes and who was Me Too'd. Louis C.K. He has a short skit called If Murder Was Legal. If murder was legal, it'd be a whole different world. And that applies to my life as well. I would get rid of a whole lot of people. You're not on the list. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh boy, nice distraction. But we do need humor, and that's the nice thing about life. And the big thing for me has always been education, because most important of all is prevention. And we cannot prevent right now what has already happened, but we can do something about it for possibly one more generation at least, and that's through education. I put in the chat about character education, and it can have dramatic impact within a very short time in regard to violence and everything else. The whole thing about what we need to look at in regard to the environment and the corruption and everything else has to be done multifaceted, because this idea of the climate and not having, let's say, these green actioneers to be able to help with the 70% of cause of pollution, which is in the home. And I can put all kinds of references to that into the chat for people's spreading around to wherever they can and putting it on their chat boards or their multimedia facets. But we are creating also the peace matrix, which is connecting up a lot of these different organizations to have them cross-pollinate and synergize to be able to create a massive wave of information getting out there without having to have TV shows, whether it's MSNBC or if it's Fox News or what, to be able to highlight it, or the New York Times or what. We can get the media expressed through people, and the masses are what is the power. But thank you. I just pontificated too much, and I'd love your response and how you could see any kind of prevention, because you've been to the extreme to help us out on this. Thank you.
Okay. Oh,
let's give Guy an opportunity to respond to
yeah, for sure.
Guy.
Thank you. That's all I got to say. Sorry.
All right. Sounds like Kurt said it all. Thank you, Kurt.
Yes.
Okay, Jack, over to you.
All right. Well, I don't know if you're aware of a pretty high profile, pretty credible person who is a scientist or claims to be. Greg Braden does a lot of talks, and he has a lot of association with a lot of science. It's not his science, but he said that science has shown or proven that a lot of the global warming that's going on is due to something happening on the core of the Earth, some kind of rotation of some kind of, I don't know. I don't know exactly I don't know enough about it, but I guess if you've heard of what I'm talking about, you'd understand that there's something at the core of the Earth. If it rotates one way, you get cooling. If it rotates the other way, it get warming. And his comment is, even if humans weren't on Earth and there was no CO2, and of course during the ice age there wasn't, or at least not human made, that there would still be global warming. Have you heard of that theory?
Yes, I hear everything, especially if it's out there beyond the edge, I would say. And I followed up by checking a few sources, and I couldn't find anything to support that idea. Are bad things going to happen whether we're here or not? Yes, of course. But we know with great certainty, we've known for a long time with great certainty that greenhouse gases warm the planet. There's no getting around that. I don't care what's happening with the lava at the center of the Earth. We, through our collective actions, are warming the planet. I don't see how anybody can deny that at this point. And so focusing on something over which we have no control doesn't seem like the best route to go to me.
Yeah, and I don't think he was saying we shouldn't deal with the carbon and what humans are doing, but just that warming maybe to a lesser extent would be happening anyway. But yeah, I hear what you're saying for sure. I agree, of course. And I'm done.
Thank you, Jack. All right, next up is Michael Prent, followed by Robert. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks, Professor Guy, for being here. We had another renowned climate expert visit us a couple weeks ago, and he thought that we should change the direction of our Defense Department for at least 1 or 2 years with solutions for climate in mind. Is that something that you would consider agreeing with, or that approach, shifting the Department of Defense budget for the United States into climate solutions? Thank you.
First of all, let's call it the Department of War, as we used to in this country, before we had to boonswoggle everybody with every single act at the government level by calling it the Department of Defense. And yes, if we could take, say, 1/10 of 1% of the Pentagon's budget and point it towards action that deals with an overheated climate? Yes, I'm a huge fan. Why would we not do that? Oh, I know, because it's about the money, because it's always about the money. That's why. There's defense contractors who don't want us to cool the planet because they would rather make their money killing people than have a planet with habitat for human animals. All together with me. Thank you for the question.
Yeah,
Thank you for your attendance here and being so inspiring. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Michael. And next up is Robert. Go for it, Robert.
Yes, nice to meet you. This is Mwesi Robert from Uganda. My question or my submission is carbon emission are increasing because from non-human and human being, the lifestyle of human being, whereby the IPCC is coming out every year coming out with the figures, but what the recommendation they are not what they recommend in IPCC, they are not observing what they recommend. And here in the lifestyle, you find some people, they take their lifestyle to benefit their own living, others they are losing. And in that sense of benefiting, they are making other to lose. And those who are benefiting, they are increasing carbon emission, and they are not thinking about how to reduce it. In fact, they are continuing to make waste, to accumulate waste from that. So that one we call it supremacy, whereby those waste people, they take time to rule other people, and they don't consider this decentralized system. So if we can all think about how can we invest in women and children, as those people, they are the primary drivers of the change. And if the woman can engage in reducing carbon emission, and also children can also have a right to come in the world. I will refer you to some writer, Carter Dellard, who wrote the book called Fair Start, where the children need a fair start to stay in this world, and quoted it some articles. How can we do this? And also there is what we call false promise. For many years, many COPs, many IPCC, they have been coming out. Very many leaders, they have been coming out pledging reparations. And we as Africans, we contribute less emission compared to other continents. And we are more affected compared to other continents. So what is that? So there should be an obligation to pay reparation to those people who were harmed in that sense of accumulating waste from that thing. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch a question. Did you have a question?
It was a submission. It was not question, it was submission.
Oh, yes. Well, there is no question that the global north is responsible for an overwhelming proportion of the emissions, especially the carbon emissions. And in fact, if you want to go a step further, there's no question that millionaires and billionaires are responsible for far more emissions than the rest of us. So 1% of people, almost all Caucasian, almost all living in Western Europe or in North America, are responsible for an enormous amount of the emissions. other than giving somebody else to blame besides us. I don't know what good it does us to know that. So sometimes I tell people that the fastest way to human extinction, and therefore extinction of all life on Earth, is loss of aerosol masking. And so the masses of us, you and I, and everybody we know, we are responsible for conserving fossil fuels, for reducing our footprint, our environmental footprint. The billionaires, they're responsible for maintaining aerosol masking. You see, everybody has a part to play. Theirs is more fun than ours. I wish that it weren't so.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Next up is Shannon, followed by Jackie. Go ahead, Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon Bailey. I'm in Northern California. Been following Guy for over a decade. Moved to Northern California 8 years ago to try to be a homesteader and kind of to be more self-sufficient and prepping. And we have 40-acre farm, but that's not going to save us. What I've been really following, and I know this group wants to pursue ideas about what we can do about this predicament that we're in. Two interesting ideas have been floated that I think bear mention. The first is the mirrors on the ocean, MERS, and then there's another technology which is called OM Tech, and there's an example of that operating in Hawaii for the last decade plus. Because the ocean is covered with 4/5 of the planet, and really the top surface of the soil of the Earth that's not on the ocean is not very heat holding or otherwise. My understanding is that we really need to cool the oceans. And if we cool the oceans, we basically help cool the land masses as well. Container ship size, ocean thermal energy conversion using Stirling engines, and maybe oxygenating the oceans underneath to help the life forms recover, seems like something that wouldn't cause a lot of trouble on the Earth surfaces for cities and suburbs and rural areas, but might be able to put a big dent in the temperatures of the ocean. As far as aerosol masking or vaporizing ocean water or distilling it and making it not salty and throwing that into the air, I don't know. But what are your thoughts about the ocean mirrors and ocean thermal conversion, which actually removes heat by turning it into either hydrogen and oxygen splitting or other possible energy, which is electricity, stored some way.
The ocean is everything. Without the ocean, without a living ocean, there will not be life on Earth. That's where life on Earth came from, is from the oceans. So it's not hyperbole to indicate that the ocean is everything. And your reference to mirrors for Earth's energy rebalancing. I don't know that they're going for mirrors anymore. I think that they have switched to reflective plastic material. Is that right?
That would make sense.
And I think it was a great idea when Dr. Tao first came up with it, but there was not enough interest from the people who needed to be interested, government officials and particularly wealthy people, to carry that to the next step. And so I think it's not doing well in the grand scheme of things at this point, which is too bad. I encourage the use of all of these strategies while also encouraging understanding that we are all going to die. Twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, my phone tells me Amor Fati. which is the ancient Greek expression for love your fate. And it's an order from me to me, and it could be an order for you as well. And it's an order that my phone gives me to tell me to love my fate. And I think about this frequently. You know, there are a few things that I chose very wisely about this life. One, my place of birth. Two, my parents. So that's huge. And then I chose, to the extent we choose anything, I think the prospects of that are stunningly small. I chose all the right thing. I chose to be a Caucasian man in this world. Are you kidding me? I could not do any better than that. Otherwise, it seems we choose incorrectly at almost every turn. And I strongly suspect that's because the masses are not involved in the choosing. That the truly monetarily wealthy people have control, the likes of which the rest of us can only imagine. I think that's too bad.
Do you have any thoughts about the ocean thermal conversion technology being done at container ship scale, thousands of them?
I don't know enough about it to comment intelligently, and whereas that usually doesn't stop me from commenting, this time I'm going to hold back.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, the one in Hawaii is an interesting system that's been powering a small community area for a decade plus. And it basically removes heat by converting it to electricity, which then turns it back into heat again, I guess.
Right. I was just going to say, remember, civilization is a heat engine, no matter how you power it. And so we have to keep that in mind when we're pursuing these strategies.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Shannon. Next up is Jackie, followed by Aaron. Go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you. My husband wants to know, I think it's 69 is where we are now with self-reinforcing feedback loops. He wants to know which ones we've already passed and how many of them are there.
At GuyMcPherson.com, in a really long essay that I stopped working on in 2016.
Right.
I identified 68 self-reinforcing feedback loops. The IPCC, when was that? September 24th, 2019, in the IPCC Special Report on the Ocean and Cryosphere in a Changing Climate, concluded that an overheated ocean was responsible for, again, a self-reinforcing feedback loop, the inability to turn the ship around. So there's 69 at least. I'm sure there are many others, but exactly one is required to ensure the irreversibility of climate change. We know about 69. I'm sure there are others, but why bother?
Have any of them started? That's what his question is.
Yes, these 68 I identified, and the one that
okay, so they all have started. Okay.
Yes, they're all underway.
They've all started. Okay, that was his speculation to me was, have any of them started, or were they identified as being on the road, but they've started? Thank you. Thank you so
underway.
much.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Up next is Aaron. Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay. Hello, Guy. What are your observations and thoughts on the seeding experiments of the oceans with iron or iron oxide in a particular matter?
Well, it violates international law, so whether I think it's a good idea or not doesn't really matter, does it? Yes, a rogue so-called scientist was the first to try this off the Pacific coast of North America, and it was shut down because it violates international law. This is another one of those things that we can try it all we want, but if we don't know what it's going to do, and in that earlier case, it had the opposite of the intended effect. We don't know what it's going to do. We might want to start a little smaller than conducting a global scale experiment. In fact, we're conducting a global scale experiment and it's not working out at all. Thank you for the
Okay,
question.
thank you.
Any question
you.
that allows me to rant is a good question. So thank you.
All right. Well, good stuff. Well, speaking of ranting, thank you, Aaron, and thank you all for your questions. I'd love to, now that we don't have any hands raised at the moment for additional Q&A, I'd like to propose that we shift gears, and that those of us who've joined with Guy in initiating a People's Forum for Cooling the Planet, each of us say a few words. So when you're ready to say a few words, if you're one of the initiators, go ahead and raise your hands, and then Kurt will go to the rest of the folks in the room. I'm talking about the ones who specifically founded People's Forum for Cooling the Planet. So with thanks, Kurt. All right. So Mike, Melissa, Jamie, James, feel free to raise your hands when you're ready, and we'll share. I'll go ahead and go ahead, Melissa. Yeah.
I want to thank you, Guy, for being here, and everyone who's joined us. Every time I hear what you have to say, I'm just speechless. You know, I love life so much. That I just can't believe we got here, and yet, sorry, I'm just full of tears.
Every time I hear what I have to say, it makes me wish I was speechless. Why can't I just shut up?
I want to share my tears with all of you. You know, I think we suppress our emotions, and I think vulnerability is really important at this time on the planet. I want to remind everyone who's here to practice kindness. I've seen some messages that sound a little cryptic. I'm not going to mention any names in the chat, but you know, let's not attack the messenger. Let's all listen with compassion and practice that. And whether or not we save life on Earth, I think being compassionate and loving all of life, and whatever any one of us can do, whether it's just realizing everything is sacred here, you know, having that awareness and that intention to spread love, and however you do that is an important thing. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Well, I haven't looked at the chat, and there's a reason for that. It's the same reason I don't look at comments on the troll farm. I mean, on YouTube, when I post a video there. You can't do anything to me, people. I have two things left. I have the love of a decent woman. I have my integrity. And until those get taken away, there's nothing anybody can do to me. Your words mean nothing.
And Guy, I think you mean your negative words, and there have been, I think, very little of that in the chat today that I've seen. So Melissa, you probably, I haven't been reading the chat religiously today, but I
mean, it's more a message just generally in the world, you know, I'm there, you know, that wasn't really bad that in the chat, but it's just generally in the world, you know, when you read the news, the way people speak to one another. I just wanted to remind us all to be practicing compassion and kindness.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, sweetheart. All right, James has his hand up. James in Cork City, Ireland. Go for it.
Thanks, Chairman. And I understand where you're coming from, Melissa, and I share your pain, look. I just want to thank Guy as well for giving us this time, and for you know, still hanging in there given the amount of abuse he's had to deal with over his you know, the latest number of years now he's putting up with it, like. And for that, all I can do is commend you that you're still doing it, and you're still, you know, putting out the word. Like, yes, I mean, we all know what can happen to whistleblowers. You know what I mean? You know, we don't have to look at the likes of, you know, don't even have to name them. We know what happens to whistleblower, and you know, if they don't get you one way, they try to get you another way, and they usually resort to nasty fucking, you know, low behavior anyway. I don't think, you know, anyone here anyway, well, I speak for myself when I say I don't believe any of it anyway, I know that you're a man of integrity, and I thank you for what you do anyway, simple and plain. And I thank everyone as well for showing up here as well today. And look, I mean, obviously, you know, you tell it how it is, and it paints a grim picture. You know what I mean? It does. Like, the reality of the situation paints a grim picture, and none of us are here like with the idea of, you know, thinking that we somehow can cure all or sort all this out. Like, but the main thing is that we are here. We're here together. Whether we're here out of curiosity or we're here to support each other, or to even put our minds together to try and work to see, you know, even if the situation is hopeless, as Guy said, you know, it still gives us plenty of other things to do. You know what I mean? And I think myself, there are a lot of options out there in the sense of, you know, things that haven't been explored in depth or given a chance, you know, such as marine cloud brightening, which is innovative. It doesn't need an engine to run it around. It's autonomous. You know, it can be switched off at the drop of an engine, at the flick of a switch. These are things that can be talked about and all that in the future, but you know, until people start getting together, like groups like ourselves, and start talking about it, and maybe trying pushing for some kind of you know, action. Or I'm not saying that we're going to solve anything by any means, right? Because I'm not under any illusions as to that, like, but I am very much a, you know, concerned parent and citizen, and you know, I just. Basically, if at the very least, the main thing that we could do is what Guy is doing, is what I'm saying, is at least try and get the truth to people, the reality of the situation. I don't think people are going to do anything about the sky falling until they realize it's falling. And, you know, I think I think what Guy is doing is commendable, and I think that's what a lesson we can learn from it, is to try and get people to understand that, so that they can actually put the time that they have into what really matters in life. Unfortunately, our world leaders have lost the plot. I mean, we only have to look at the news to see what's going on, and we don't even get told the truth on that. We have to really search for the truth. But the point is, you know, they're not interested in trying to save us. As Guy said, it's all about the money. It comes down to the money, or it can come down to the people. And that's what we're here for. At least we can get some people, like-minded people like yourselves, that want to get together. And who knows, if we put enough heads together, what we can achieve. So I'm just thanking everyone for turning up, and just saying, you know, God bless everyone anyway. And, you know, I hope something may come of this anyway. That's all I could say. Thanks, and God bless.
Thank you, James. Thank you. And Robert, Norman, I see you've got your hands up. I just wanted to take a little space for those of us who've co-founded the People's Forum for Cooling the Planet to weigh in, as Melissa and James have. I'll take this opportunity to weigh in. I believe very much in the power of people like ourselves coming together. I think we can make a difference. I think we can make a huge difference. And I think we're just getting started with today's meeting. Today's meeting was intended to be just a volunteers pre-meeting, and then we'll have general meetings every Tuesday after this, starting next week, next Tuesday on July 2nd. And I would like to see a really significant number of people joining not just this forum, but forums generally for cooling the planet. Now, I'm under no illusions that cooling the planet will not solve all of our problems, but I believe it is a great place to start, and I believe it is the only place to start, because if the runaway overheating of our planet is allowed to proceed unencumbered, it will kill us all, as Guy McPherson has pointed out through the various peer-reviewed technical journal articles that have studied the various facets of this. So I believe we have a very clear, and very simple mission. And when I say cool the planet, I mean first stop the overheating and then actually reverse it. So right now we're overheating at somewhere between 2 and 3 watts per square meter, averaged all over the entire surface of the planet and averaged over 24 hours in a day. This is an insane rate of overheating. The oceans are bearing the brunt. We're destroying marine life, followed by the poles. The ice on the polar ice caps in Greenland are suffering tremendously. And now the land is overheating as well. It's killing us all. And I believe that we can cool our planet. I believe we have the technology. We have to perfect it, and we have to ensure that it is implemented at planetary scale all around the world. And we simply need to apply our collective intelligence to it. Right now, we are very, very fragmented as a species when it comes to this matter, right? You have, various different academic groups working on various different facets of this. God bless them all for doing what they're doing. But then the main drivers of action are the corporations and the governments, which, as Guy pointed out very well, are working hand in hand in frankly, a fascist context. And in that context, there is one group that is making lots of money at this, and that's the green energy and green tech. And not that I'm opposed to green energy or green tech, but we have to do things in a logical order. And if we simply eliminate fossil fuel emissions, we eliminate the aerosol masking effect, we will see an acceleration in planetary overheating, which we simply cannot afford right now. And the various efforts to do experiments in geoengineering, such as marine cloud brightening, which I see as very benign, and in terms of local implementations in one part of the world impacting other parts of the world, that's a reality. But that can be optimized for. I'm in touch with Dr. Alan Gadian at the University of Leeds, who did computer modeling in association with Professor Stephen Salter. May he rest in peace. He passed away a couple of months ago, but he did amazing pioneering work in coming up with the autonomous vessels that James mentioned, which can spray saltwater particles into the air as cloud condensation nuclei. And in a meeting, those two researchers, Alan Gadian and Professor Salter, showed how we can model for all this and optimize it. And one of the nice things about these autonomous wind and wave powered vessels is that they can be located anywhere. And so whatever the optimal configuration is, we can achieve that very quickly. And of course, it would be an ongoing learning process of deploying these vessels, creating the cloud condensation nuclei, cooling the planet, and then measuring exactly where the cooling is taking place. And if there are places that are overheating, we can address that. So I believe we have the technology, we have the intelligence to do it. What we need is precisely this forum and multiple forums in perhaps different cultures, different languages, different parts of the world. But we need to come together and take responsibility for this, because no one else is. If we lived in a different world, if we lived in a world where governments are responsible and ethical and well-run, and true democracies, whether representative or otherwise, but that the bottom line is that they were actually doing their jobs, then we wouldn't need this forum any more than I would need to put together a forum for firefighting. There's well-organized firefighting operations throughout the world. Well, there are well-organized firefighting operations except for one context, and that's fighting the fires on the entire planet, fighting the overheating of the entire planet. No one is taking the responsibility to do that. And that is what inspired all of us to step up and say, well, if no one else is, why not us? Look around the room. Look at the different faces in the room, these beautiful faces. All of you, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you. And thank you, Guy, for taking the lead. All of us can be leaders at this. all of us can invite others to join us. If not us, who? And if not now, when? We're overheating exponentially. So let's continue to come together. We'll be meeting every Tuesday right here in this Zoom room. And thank you for the hearts and the silent applauses and the thumbs up. Much appreciated. Thank you, thank you. And thank you to the blue dinosaur there in Ecuador. Let us continue to come together every Tuesday. Let us grow in our numbers, and let us grow in our vision of what we can accomplish together. I believe in collective human intelligence. Here, I'll put into the chat the main Google document that kind of kicked this whole thing off that Guy posted in his first video. So that Google document leads to another Google document, which then leads to another Google document. We go deeper and deeper into detail in this these set of Google documents that we've co-authored. So please have a read of those and join as a commenter if you'd like. And we've spelled out quite a bit about collective human intelligence, which remains relatively untapped in this form. Part of the vision is an unbounded network of conversations like this one, but with much greater numbers, we can divide and conquer, right? And have certain conversations going about the problem and analyzing and measuring exactly the extent of the problem and projecting, predicting, how much more time do we have in which areas in which to act. That defines the urgency. And then the other conversations about the different solutions, such as they are, the pros, the cons, the costs, the potential impacts, etc. And then addressing the very imperfect human frameworks that were of the hand that were dealt, not the hand that we want, but the hand that were dealt in terms of governments, corporations, the media, et cetera, and what they're all promoting, which is decarbonization. Why? Because there's money in decarbonization. There is no money in marine cloud brightening that I know of, or stratospheric aerosol injection, or these other methods of just simply cooling the planet. So how do we deal with all of those, this human mess that we're in the midst of, that is not leading us towards the truth, to the contrary, leading us towards lies that decarbonization alone can solve this. Decarbonization alone, by eliminating the aerosol masking effect, will cause our planet the overheating to accelerate even further. So these are deadly lies that are being put upon us. And I see all of us who are in this room as the resistance. At one point, I think the Cuban revolutionaries who ultimately prevailed against the dictatorship of Fulgencio Batista numbered something like, 17 after the failed their failed invasion on the coast. They headed up to the mountains. There were 17 of them, and they ultimately prevailed. They built support, and they ultimately prevailed. Not that I'm a huge fan of everything that the Castro dictatorship did once they seized power, quite the contrary. But my point is very simply that don't be fooled by our small numbers. And certainly don't be discouraged by our small numbers. The Margaret Mead quote that Marco often quotes. In fact, I'm going to let Marco say the quote. Marco's got his hand up, and he is one of our co-initiators. So Norman and Robert and Michael, who have your hands up, I just request a little more patience because I want the initiators to have their say here. And I went a little bit longer than I intended to, but I feel very, very strongly that we can do this. So let's keep coming together. Come every Tuesday, 2:00 Eastern. Bring your friends, bring skeptics, and we're going to work this process and co-create our way forward. And after the initiators have had their chance to have their say, then I'm going to ask everyone, starting with Norman and Robert and Michael, who've had their hands up and been patient, to please share as well. So with that, I'm going to pass the talking feather to Marco. Take it away, Marco.
Thanks, Jamin. And you, of course, read my mind. I don't want us to be discouraged by the smaller numbers today. And, as the weeks go on, I'm sure everybody can't make it every week, but, tell your friends and your relatives and anybody that wants a fighting chance for humanity to show up when they can and bring solutions they've heard of, because maybe we haven't heard of them. That's the collective human intelligence, is when we all share information, and that leaves us each access to each other's, information, and that's what will build that human collective intelligence. And of course, my favorite quote is, never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world. In fact, it is the only thing it ever has. And that's a quote by Margaret Mead. And with that, I'm complete, and I pass the feather.
All right, I'm gonna see if I can call on Mike Hillcoat, if you're available, Mike, to make a comment or two. And is Jamie
I'm
here?
here.
Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Obviously, I can only echo everything that's been said by Marco and James and Jamin and Melissa. Not everyone knows me here. I am 35, turning 36. The day after I turned 34, I decided to repurpose a lifetime of different skill sets in order to facilitate any of these connections and the contributions to co-create that we can manifest together. The day after I turned 34, I realized that I keep not dying, not for lack of trying, and I couldn't idly sit by for another 35, 40 years watching this get worse. So I am very, very grateful for all the hard work that Jamin and James and Marco and Melissa and many others here have put into facilitating this group of people. And I would encourage everyone to take a good look around the room and really understand that, as Jamin said before, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? I personally, as Mark would say, a vow of unabandonment, but I'm never going to stop working to facilitate this and to make sure that if we have a fighting chance, that we do everything possible to make sure that humanity persists, as Guy said. So thank you everyone for being here, and as always, strength on the journey well, and just thank you, and thank you, Guy, and everyone else who came and has been here.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mike. And Guy, you've been very generous with your time. I would love it if you were to stay longer, but I certainly don't expect it. But I do want to invite everyone to stick around as long as you would like. As long as there are people here in the room, we will be here sharing. And with that, I'm going to pass it around to the folks who've had their hands raised. And I also want to really encourage Christopher and Jamie Gilchrist and BJ and others who've been with us for years working together on this, Peter Melton, really love to hear from everyone. Stan Pokras is an absolute pioneer in collective human intelligence and the kinds of transformations that are possible. Stan, we'd love to hear from you. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and we've got a bunch of hands raised, so I'm going to ask folks to be concise. And Guy, you have priority here. So at any point you want to jump in, since we're now kind of in free flow session, you've brought us all together. So please go ahead.
I have 4 minutes left. So if somebody has a question for me, let's go there. If not, I'm going to opt out.
Okay, if you've got a question for Guy, just speak up. Don't raise your hand because there's a bunch of hands raised already. So just keep your hands up. Those of you who've hand your any questions?
I just wanted to tell Guy that he's inspired me to write to my representative and senator here in the great state of Michigan. And literally I'm doing that as we speak. So thank you for your inspiration. I'll do more than that, but we can all start somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for Guy?
Jamie Gilchrist here from Cleveland, Ohio. And I just wanted to say thank you to Guy for your resilience and your steadfast determination on getting the truth out. Because without the truth, we have no chance. And you don't have to like the truth, but you have to know it. and Guy tells the truth. And I wanted to add quickly to everybody here that what Melissa said earlier got me crying. We have to be kind and work as a team. The reason this globe is in trouble is because of tribalism and greed and hoarding. And there's no room for that in this next phase. There's only room for love and creativity. And we've got to throw everything we can at the wall using the expert knowledge of folks like Guy McPherson that can show us what might work and what might not work, so we have a chance. And all I'm asking for is let's just try to have a chance. And I'm going back on mute.
Okay, and Guy, there was a show, I don't know if you're familiar with Humanity Rising. They do a show 5 days a week. And this morning, they had a show with Thomas F. Vallone. Have you heard of him?
No, I have not.
I'm thinking it might be a good idea. He gave a presentation this morning that I thought was really, really good about climate change and the related things. And well, I left in the chat, I left a way to contact, and I took the liberty, Stanley Pokris. But if you record the chat, you can look through it later and find Thomas F. Vallone's name or Humanity Rising name. And I left, like I say, I took the liberty of leaving Stan Pokris's email so you can get to that. But I don't know what else to say. I already said it. I don't want to babble on, but I really strongly recommend that you check him out. He seemed really, really good.
You have my contact information. Please just send it to me directly.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
I'll connect you, Jack. I'll connect you with Guy. And Stan Pokris is actually, it's Pokris, and he's here in the room right now.
Right.
Anyway, Guy, thank you once again. You're an absolute inspiration. You've changed my life. I think it's fair to say you've changed the lives of every single person in this room on this call today. And thank you so much for your bold leadership in a People's Forum for cooling the planet. We'll see you next Tuesday, if not sooner.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Guy. We'll see you soon. All right, I'm going to stop the current recording and start another one because the conversation it seems like it's just getting started now. So bear with me a moment as I stop this and start a new recording.